In the 7th year of my entanglement with Daniel, I finally became completely disillusioned with him and proposed divorce. Unexpectedly, on the way to the Civil Affairs Bureau, we had a car accident. Daniel lost his memory after the accident, with his memories remaining at the year when he loved me the most. He began to love me passionately again, giving me all his favoritism, completely forgetting those things that hurt me. However, he didn't know that I had been diagnosed with terminal cancer, with only a few days left to live. Ding! This novel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. Hearing that I was the one to actively propose divorce. Daniel on the other end of the phone was first stunned, followed by uncontrollable joy. Are you serious? You really agreed to the divorce? After getting my confirmation, Daniel hurriedly instructed. Where are you now? Still at home, right? Wait for me, I'll come back to pick you up. We'll go directly to the Civil Affairs Bureau to process the divorce, let's go now. As soon as he finished speaking, as if afraid I might say something to change my mind, he hastily hung up the phone. Hearing the beep beep sound from the phone, I casually put the phone aside and took one last look at myself in the mirror. Hair disheveled, eyes hollow, face pale, sitting on the floor covered with broken porcelain pieces. Just like a terminally ill patient. I held back again and again, but the sound of sobbing still came out uncontrollably from my throat. Daniel, do you know, I'm dying. I hugged my knees, the sobbing getting louder and louder, finally turning into heart-wrenching cries. Just this afternoon, my medical report came out, late-stage stomach cancer. From the doctor's heavy tone, I calmly accepted the fact that I only had 1 month left to live. After returning home, I originally wanted to tell Daniel about this. But before I could open my mouth, Daniel impatiently warned me not to cause trouble for his junior sister again, and said that if there was a next time, I shouldn't blame him for being merciless. But it was clearly Colleen who came to provoke me first, clearly that cup of coffee splashed on her face was her own doing. Daniel didn't give me a chance to explain. After warning me, Colleen's call came in just in time. I don't know what Colleen said on the other end of the phone, but Daniel was gently coaxing her while hurriedly grabbing his coat and leaving me alone, going crazy to the point of smashing almost all the bowls and plates on the table. Grievance, anger, disappointment, all sorts of emotions mixed together. The moment I sat on the ground out of exhaustion, that string in my heart finally snapped. In the last moments of life, I don't want to entangle with Daniel anymore. 7 years of love eventually created a pair of resentful couples. Such days are extremely exhausting. Before dying, I planned to accumulate some virtue for myself, let go of Daniel, and let go of myself. When Daniel came back and saw me sitting dazed in the mess, he was stunned at first, his brows furrowing instinctively. Then, probably thinking that I had agreed to his wish and agreed to the divorce, Daniel rarely spoke to me in a kind tone. It's a bit cold outside, remember to wear a coat. My car is parked downstairs, I'll wait for you outside. After saying that, he turned and left without any attachment. I roughly wiped the tears from my face with both hands, got up and slightly moved my already numb legs. Found my documents and then grabbed a coat to wear before going out. Daniel was leaning against the car smoking. Seeing me come out, he extinguished the half-smoked cigarette in his hand and gestured for me to get in the car. I casually opened the passenger door, only to find Colleen sitting inside eating snacks. Seeing me, Colleen said apologetically on the surface. Miss Sylvia, I'm used to sitting in the front passenger seat, I'm sorry, I'll have to trouble you to sit in the back. After saying this, she playfully stuck out her tongue. Although her words expressed apology, the smugness in her eyes was evident. You get out, I want to sit here. I firmly refused her. Colleen's mouth turned down, looking at Daniel beside her with a wronged expression. Daniel, I want to sit here, you said before that from now on only I can sit in the front passenger seat. Daniel. I called Daniel's name, interrupting Colleen's words. I get carsick, you know that. The Civil Affairs Bureau is not close, you don't want me to vomit in your car, do you? Or if you don't want to divorce today, we can change the date. After all, I'm not the one in a hurry to divorce. Hearing me say this, Daniel became anxious. He was afraid I might change my mind about the divorce, so he hurriedly coaxed Colleen in a low voice. Colleen, be good, Just put up with sitting in the back today, okay? Don't be angry. After we're done with today's business, I'll buy you that necklace you want. How about that? Besides, sitting in the front is not safe. If anything happens, if you get hurt, it would break my heart. Hearing Daniel say this, Colleen reluctantly agreed. She took her time getting out of the front seat and didn't forget to give me a fierce glare as she went to the back. Come to think of it, this was the first time she had been thwarted by me. Her unhappiness made me happy. I provocatively raised the corner of my mouth at her, then straddled into the front passenger seat, slamming the door shut heavily, blocking the fuming Colleen outside. I just didn't expect Daniel's ominous words would come true. The traffic light had just turned green, and Daniel had only started the car for a few seconds, when a large truck running a red light came straight towards us from the side. The speed was so fast that there was no time to react. In the moment before the truck was about to hit us, amidst Colleen's screams, I was still thinking about how unlucky it would be to die alongside Daniel. What I didn't expect was that Daniel, acting like a real man, threw himself over me and held me in his arms protectively. I have to say, there's a reason why Daniel's car is so expensive. Even though the front was completely caved in, the passengers inside didn't suffer any substantial injuries. However, when Daniel took the impact, his head hit the car and he lost consciousness. The ambulance and police car arrived simultaneously. As Daniel was being lifted into the ambulance, he suddenly woke up. He first looked around bewilderedly, then ignored Colleen, who was holding his hand, and calling his name excitedly, and instead looked straight at me. "Sylvia," he called out to me while struggling to get up. The medical staff beside him frantically tried to hold him down. Having narrowly escaped death, Daniel didn't first comfort his little junior, but instead focused his attention on me. I raised an eyebrow, wondering if he thought this was some trick I was playing to avoid divorcing him. Daniel's strength was frightening, the frail nurses couldn't hold him back. After breaking free, he ran straight towards me. Seeing his reaction, I instinctively took 2 steps back. All I could think was whether this tasteless man was going to lay his hands on me. Contrary to my expectations of him exploding in anger and lashing out at me, Daniel surprisingly pulled me into his embrace. "Sylvia, why are you staying so far from me? Are you angry with me? I promise I won't talk to other girls anymore. Please don't leave me." Hearing him say this, my hands that were suspended in midair trying to push him away froze completely. Was this really Daniel? What was he saying? Colleen, who had chased after him, heard these words and stood rooted to the spot, her eyes brimming with tears. She angrily shouted at Daniel. "Daniel, what are you saying? Have you forgotten that you were going to divorce this jealous and petty woman today?" Hearing her say this, Daniel's arms around me loosened a bit. I thought he had taken Colleen's words to heart and remembered that he was supposed to divorce me today. Unexpectedly, Daniel first let go of me, then quickly walked up to Colleen and, with lightning speed, slapped her hard across the face. This time, not only was I stunned, but Colleen also held her face in disbelief, staring at Daniel as tears streamed down her face. She looked at Daniel with a choked and aggrieved voice. "Senior, did I do something wrong? How could you hit me? Do you not like me anymore?" Hearing her say this, Daniel's brows furrowed so tightly they could kill a fly. "Who's your senior? Don't try to get familiar with me. I have a girlfriend, you know. And let me tell you this, if I ever hear you bad-mouthing my girlfriend again, it won't just be a slap. I don't usually hit women. Even if you insult me, I wouldn't resort to violence. But you absolutely cannot speak ill of my girlfriend, understand?" After hearing Daniel's words, Colleen froze, even forgetting to let her tears fall. Watching Daniel, who was just about to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau with me to process our divorce, suddenly say such things, I was so embarrassed that my toes curled, and I didn't know how to react. Daniel didn't seem to think there was anything wrong with what he said. After warning Colleen, he scurried back to my side to seek approval. "Sylvia, how was that? Am I a qualified boyfriend? Why aren't you saying anything? Are you still angry? I'm sorry, I really won't get too close to other girls again." That day, Vicky was acting weird for some reason. It was fine that she came to ask me questions, but then she suddenly went crazy and confessed to me. I'm a man of integrity, of course I rejected her, but I didn't expect her to suddenly kiss me on the face. After saying this, Daniel held my hand and shook it pleadingly, his eyes full of begging. I really know I was wrong. Beautiful Sylvia, please forgive me. As I heard his words, my mind exploded, followed by sealed memories being uncovered. That vibrant young man who only had eyes for me came back to life. The incident Daniel mentioned happened in our senior year of high school. At that time, I had just agreed to Daniel's pursuit and we had started dating. He was so happy that he wanted the whole world to know. But he was also afraid of getting disciplined and affecting me, so he could only be happy by himself in secret. That afternoon, a girl in our class named Vicky used the excuse of asking him questions to confess her feelings. After being rejected by Daniel, she recklessly kissed him on the face. I happened to witness the scene and was so angry that I didn't speak to Daniel for several days. During that time, Daniel tried every way possible to win back my forgiveness, repeatedly promising that such a thing would never happen again. Only then did I forgive him. 7 years had passed since this incident. How did Daniel bring it up again? At Colleen's insistence, I cooperated in coaxing Daniel to the hospital for an examination. The test results came out quickly, showing that Daniel had suffered a brain contusion due to the impact, which was compressing his brain nerves and causing memory loss. His memory had temporarily halted at a certain stage in the past. From the current situation, it seemed to have stopped at the year when we first got together. This left Colleen dumbfounded. She anxiously grabbed the doctor's hand, asking what could be done. The doctor pondered for a moment, then shook his head and sighed. As for his memory, we can only wait for it to recover on its own. It could recover tomorrow, or in 10 days to 2 weeks, or possibly. It was also possible that Daniel would remain in this condition for quite a long time. Although the doctor didn't say it outright, we could understand his meaning. Colleen was furious. She grabbed the doctor's white coat and started cursing him as a quack, even threatening that he must use any method necessary to cure Daniel. However, the doctor coldly distanced himself from Colleen. Ma'am, if you continue like this, I'll have to call security. Hearing the doctor say this, Colleen finally quieted down like a deflated balloon. She glared at me fiercely. Don't get smug. He's only being nice to you because he's lost his memory and forgotten who I am. Don't think you can take advantage of this to monopolize my senior. Otherwise, when he regains his memory, he won't let you off easily. Seeing her like this, I found it somewhat amusing. I smirked and said mockingly, "You seem to have forgotten that Daniel is still legally my husband. Isn't it only natural for me to be with my husband? How is that monopolizing? As for you, you've been clinging to a married woman without any legitimate status. Now that Daniel doesn't remember who you are, you should think about what grounds you have to keep pestering him." Hearing my words, Colleen's face darkened even further, looking extremely ugly. Having successfully angered her to the point of stomping her feet, I took the opportunity before Daniel came out to leave the hospital without looking back. Of course, what I had just said was only to anger Colleen. Although Daniel had lost his memory now, I didn't want to rekindle our old feelings just because he was currently all focused on me. In the last stage of life, drinking poison to quench thirst had no meaning. After returning home, I silently packed up the few belongings I had, stepping over the mess on the floor. After simply packing some clothes into a suitcase, I went out, hailed a taxi, and headed straight for the airport. The destination of my trip was a coastal city in a foreign country. For years, I had been clinging to Daniel like a bitter wife, constantly watching his every move, having hysterical arguments with him every time rumors of his affairs surfaced. I should have been tired of it long ago. Perhaps I needed to take a breather, break free from the constraints Daniel had placed on me, and experience a different kind of life. Sitting on the plane, a strong discomfort in my stomach made me break out in a cold sweat. I could only hunch over, gently pressing on my stomach to try and alleviate the pain. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, I grabbed a handful of pills and swallowed them, which made me feel a bit better. Exhausted from the ordeal, I curled up in the seat and closed my eyes tiredly, soon falling asleep. However, this sleep was not peaceful. Perhaps Daniel's behavior after losing his memory had stirred up my memories, making me recall some things from the past. Daniel and I had been classmates from middle school through high school, 6 years in total. From the first year of high school, he had pursued me relentlessly for 3 years. His feelings for me were known to everyone. A teenager's love is bright and undisguised, to the extent that even when he was studying abroad in university, he still maintained the frequency of flying back every month to see me. Everyone thought we would be together forever, and I once believed so too. Until the 4th year of university when Daniel met Colleen abroad. Both studying in a foreign country, Colleen affectionately called him senior from the moment she met him. And from then on, she stuck to him like a little tail. At first, Daniel was extremely annoyed, often calling me to complain about how stupid and clingy Colleen was. Always asking him questions about everything. I would stay up late, dealing with the time difference to listen to Daniel's venting, only to realize that Colleen occupied the majority of his conversation. After noticing my displeasure, Daniel gradually stopped mentioning Colleen. I thought he would keep his distance from other girls on his own, as he had done countless times before when pursued. But this time, I was wrong. After graduating from university, Daniel hurriedly returned to hold our wedding. But on the day of the wedding, he became distracted after hearing the news of Colleen's return to the country. The wedding hadn't even ended when he hastily left me and the guests, rushing to the airport alone to pick up Colleen. When faced with my questioning afterwards, Daniel remained silent for a long time before apologizing in a hoarse voice. He said that actually, while abroad, he had already realized that his heart had changed. He had been irresistibly attracted to Colleen, falling in love with that bright and cheerful girl. But since I had been with him for so many years, he felt he owed me closure, so he still chose to marry me. If he had said these words at any time before the wedding, I would have respected his honesty to some degree. But first marrying me, then severely humiliating me at the wedding, and now telling me in a tone of condescension that this wedding I had long anticipated was just an obligatory closure for me, I only felt disgusted. From a young age, people have always described me as rigid and stubborn. I have an obstinate personality, so when I heard Daniel's words, I exploded on the spot. I grabbed his collar and desperately asked him why he could stop loving me so suddenly, wondering what he really thought of me. I persistently sought the reason for Daniel's change of heart, refusing to believe that the man who once loved me so deeply, whose eyes were full of nothing but me, could have a change of heart. After days of mental and physical torment, I became obsessive and frantic. In the end, Daniel didn't even want to come home anymore. It wasn't until the plane landed that I managed to struggle out of these unbearable memories. After taking a taxi to the hotel and just putting my things away, my phone started ringing. I picked it up and looked at it. It was Daniel calling. I didn't answer, but he kept calling over and over again. Finally, I sighed helplessly and answered the phone. "Sylvia, where are you? I just got out of the hospital and couldn't find you. This stupid woman called Colleen keeps clinging to me, saying I like her. She's gone crazy. Where are you now? I'll come find you." From the other end of the phone, I could hear Colleen's cries. "Senior, don't abandon me. I only have you." Daniel impatiently retorted, "Who's your senior? It's disgusting. Stay away from me. I'm afraid my girlfriend will get jealous." Seeing that I remained silent for a long time, Daniel became anxious. "Sylvia, are you still angry with me?" "No," I said flatly, unconsciously clenching my right hand. The pain of my nails digging into my flesh brought me back to reality. "Daniel, don't come looking for me. We're over." After saying this, I hung up the phone and hurriedly blocked Daniel's number. After completing this series of actions smoothly, I threw my phone away and leaned against the headboard, breathing heavily. Tears fell involuntarily. I could propose divorce to the 25-year-old Daniel without any psychological burden, but I couldn't calmly break up with the 18-year-old Daniel. Because that was the Daniel who loved me the most, a ray of light in my life. That year, my father passed away and my mother remarried. I lost my happy family overnight and became an unwanted child. It was Daniel who stayed by my side. He drove away those classmates who had always disliked me and took the opportunity to mock me. He held me as I cried inconsolably and said he would always be with me. He said he would be my family from then on. Undeniably, I fell for him. I wanted a family so badly. I didn't want to be alone. So I got together with Daniel, hoping he could fill the void of love in my life and give me a complete family. The Daniel of that time indeed did so. He cared for me meticulously, cherished me, protected me, making me fall head over heels in love with him. Therefore, even when Daniel later had a change of heart, the lingering warmth from our youth still held my hand, making it hard for me to let go. After finally sorting out my messy emotions, I went out to the beach not far from the hotel. The horizon at dusk was tinged with a golden glow. I could see a few foreigners leisurely strolling on the beach. I walked far along the coastline, the setting sun stretching my shadow long. As I walked further west, there were fewer and fewer people around. Then I saw a young boy sitting on the beach building a sandcastle. Unlike the fair-skinned, high-nosed, blonde and blue-eyed natives of this country, this boy clearly had Asian features. I walked over and greeted him, carefully asking in Mandarin if he was a fellow countryman. The boy lifted his head towards me. His eyes were like bright, soulless black opals. His hands were feeling around, grabbing nearby sand to fill in his creation. After hearing my greeting, he responded warmly in a language I knew well. I wanted to ask about his eyes, but he misunderstood, thinking I was asking what he was doing. So he excitedly showed me his handiwork. Isn't it beautiful, the castle I built? Looking in the direction he pointed, I could see the full picture of his work. It was a pointed castle shape, a bit rough but not hard to make out. It's very beautiful, I nodded with a smile, praising sincerely. Really? After receiving my affirmation, the boy was happy for a moment, but quickly became dejected. Too bad I can't see it. Hearing him say this, my guess was confirmed. This little boy was blind. But sister, the little boy cheered up again. Even though I can't see, I'm very smart. I can tell what things look like just by touching them. Really? You're amazing. I instinctively praised him, but the little boy wasn't happy. He pouted and said, "Come on, you're being so perfunctory, sister." Saying this, he stood up and walked towards me, carefully feeling his way to my face. Not understanding his intention, I cooperated and didn't move or refuse. The little boy excitedly touched my face, covering it with sand, while saying, "Sister, you have a high nose bridge and big eyes, right? Oh, you're smiling. Sister is very happy now, your mouth is curved. But sister, you're too skinny, there's hardly any meat on your face. Though that doesn't stop you from being a pretty sister." Hearing him say this, I was successfully flattered and burst out laughing. The little boy raised his eyebrows and lowered his hand, grinning at me proudly. "How about that, sister? I'm impressive, right? Very impressive, indeed." Even though he couldn't see it, I instinctively gave him a thumbs up. Then, at his invitation, I joined in, building sandcastles with him on the beach. During our conversation, I learned that he had been blind since childhood due to a high fever, and had never found a suitable cornea match, which is why his condition persisted until now. He was here because his family had immigrated to this city 2 years ago and opened a flower shop nearby. Feeling bored by himself, he often came here to play with the sand. After that day, we became good friends. I would come to play with him from time to time, and my worries would disappear. I almost forgot that I was a patient with limited time left. About a week passed like this, and Daniel finally found me. His clothes were all wrinkled, his hair disheveled, and his eyes bloodshot. At first glance, he looked more like a patient than I did. When he saw me, he first hugged me tightly, ignoring my struggles, then asked in a hoarse voice, "Sylvia, why did you suddenly break up with me? How could you not want me anymore?" After I finally managed to break free, I looked at Daniel with some amusement. "You know, if it weren't for that car accident, we would have our divorce certificate by now. Daniel, we should have separated long ago." Hearing me say this, Daniel froze on the spot, then looked at me in disbelief. "How is that possible, Sylvia? You're lying to me, aren't you? I finally managed to win you over, we were supposed to be together for life, how could I possibly divorce you? Is it that you don't like me anymore, so you're taking advantage of my memory loss to deceive me?" I raised an eyebrow at him. After all these days, hasn't Colleen told you about the mess between us? Hearing me say this, Daniel's expression stiffened. He opened his mouth but ultimately couldn't say anything. Given Colleen's personality, she had probably already told Daniel about their relationship in great detail. Over and over again, to prove that Daniel had truly fallen in love with her later on. Even if Daniel didn't believe Colleen's one-sided story, he should have confirmed the truth from others by now. After a long silence, Daniel looked at me and suddenly raised his hand to slap himself hard. Sylvia, I was sick, I was confused, I was crazy, I don't know what happened between me and that woman Colleen. But I truly love you. Please, don't leave me, okay? I really can't accept that you don't want me. Towards the end, Daniel's voice became choked with emotion, his eyes red as if he was about to cry. Seeing this, I couldn't help but feel a bit dazed. It had been many years since I'd seen Daniel like this. However, even so, I didn't soften my heart. Daniel, if you knew what you've done to me over these years, and put yourself in my position, you wouldn't be able to forgive yourself. Just making the decision to leave you has already taken all of my courage. You know what kind of person I am. Once I make a decision, I don't easily change it. And even if you've lost your memory now and returned to the time when you loved me most, who knows when you might regain your memory and kick me aside to be with Colleen again? Do you think I could accept being abandoned by you over and over? Hearing me say this, Daniel's face instantly turned pale, and he looked so pitiful, as if he might collapse at any moment. I directly picked up my phone and called Colleen. Daniel is here with me. If you don't come and take him away, I might just rekindle our old flame. Daniel insisted on staying and refused to leave, so I had nothing better to do than to wait it out with him. We sat at the doorway. He was betting on my heart softening, while I was timing how long it would take Colleen to arrive. Just as my patience was about to run out, Colleen finally rushed over. Senior! Seeing Colleen, Daniel's face showed obvious irritation. He dodged Colleen's attempt to hug him and angrily rebuked. I've told you so many times, I'm really not your senior. Aren't you annoying? If you like calling people senior so much, why don't you join a monastery? Then everyone there will be your senior. Hearing Daniel's harsh scolding, Colleen started crying again. As soon as I heard her cry, I reflexively got a headache. I simply closed the door, shutting them both outside. The 18-year-old Daniel was as stubborn as a mule. No matter how much Colleen pleaded and reasoned with him, he refused to go back with her, insisting on staying outside my house alone. Colleen had no choice but to stay here with Daniel. Every day when I went out, Daniel would follow me like a little tail. And closely behind him was Colleen, who looked like she wanted to cut me into pieces with her eyes. I came to build sandcastles with the little boy called Albert, while Daniel and Colleen bickered not far away. Over time, they became a regular evening spectacle on the beach. My illness was getting worse. I could almost feel my life slipping away with every mouthful of blood I coughed up. I realized I wouldn't last more than a few days. I had planned to stay here for a few days before moving on to the next destination, but Daniel was clinging to me tightly. Even if I left, he would undoubtedly follow close behind. So I suddenly had a wicked thought. What if I died? What would it be like if I died in this year when he loved me the most? Daniel would probably feel like the sky was falling. Although this wasn't exactly moral, he had tormented me for so many years. So getting revenge on him before I died could be considered a fair exchange. Having made up my mind, I suddenly became visibly kinder to Daniel. Daniel, who had grown accustomed to my cold demeanor these days, was clearly pleasantly surprised by my change. Sylvia, you've forgiven me, haven't you? I knew you still cared for me in your heart and couldn't bear to let me go. Sylvia, I really like you so much. Can we stay together forever? I looked at Colleen, who was fuming behind Daniel but didn't dare scold me in front of him, and my smile deepened. Sure, let's stay together. You've always said you'd make up for our honeymoon. Let's consider this time here as our honeymoon. Daniel, having received my forgiveness, was absolutely overjoyed. He wanted to hold me in the palm of his hand, hanging on my every word, as if trying to make up for all the romance he had missed in these years. If he wasn't surprising me with roses scattered on the beach. He was holding my hand for a stroll along the shore under the starry night. Imagining buying me a mountain estate back home, filled with bluebells and a swing for me. He even said he would transfer all his assets to my account when we returned. To alleviate my worries about him changing his mind if he regained his memories. This way, even if I really regain my memories and change my mind to like that idiot Colleen, you can control my finances and not give me any pocket money. That gold digger Colleen won't be able to get anything out of me, so she probably won't cling to me anymore. Seeing him make plans so decisively, I found it somewhat amusing, but I nodded and pretended to agree. After all, I wouldn't live to see that day anyway, so I let him say whatever he wanted. Probably finding Colleen annoying, Daniel suggested sending her back to the country. Colleen was initially incredulous about this, but once she realized what was happening, she threw a huge tantrum, yelling that she would rather die than leave Daniel's side. Daniel hated clingy people the most, and the more Colleen acted like this, the more determined he became to send her back. Seeing that Daniel didn't care about her feelings at all and only had eyes for me, Colleen became completely unsettled. One day, I woke up early while Daniel was still asleep and went to the beach. Barefoot, stepping on the damp sand, I patiently listened to the swish-swish sound beneath my feet. The sun had just risen, warming me gently. Since my illness had worsened, I hadn't had a good night's sleep in many days. Night after night of stomach pain had tormented me to the point where I almost wanted to end it all. Just as I had grown tired of walking and sat down by the sea, my mind in a jumble. Suddenly someone struck the back of my head, causing a dull pain. When I woke up, I found myself lying in a messy factory. Colleen, standing before me, smiled triumphantly when she saw me wake up. "Sylvia, bet you didn't expect this, did you? You've finally fallen into my hands. I didn't want to hurt you, but you forced me to do this. Why is it that after all these years of careful planning, just when I was about to get my senior, he lost his memories and went back to only having eyes for you? I don't have the energy to plan everything all over again. If you die, even if he never regains his memories, he'll have no chance with you. He'll eventually accept me." As she spoke, Colleen's face took on a hint of madness, as if she had convinced herself and was already imagining the days when Daniel would cater to her every whim. I remained silent throughout, calmly watching her. Seeing this, Colleen became somewhat dissatisfied and stepped forward to slap me across the face. "I hate that high and mighty attitude of yours the most. Why is it that you don't have to do anything, and he still loves you in the end, while all my hard work amounts to nothing? Are you very pleased with yourself, Sylvia? Too bad you ran into me. You're destined to lose to me. Just die obediently. Don't worry, I'll take good care of him. He only needs me." With that, she no longer paid attention to me, but turned around and carefully poured gasoline from an oil drum onto the debris around the factory. Finally, she lit the oil-soaked flammable materials inside and slowly closed the factory door with a triumphant smile. The fire rose to the sky, accompanied by a sizzling sound. In my mind, I thought this might be for the best. I only had a few days left to live anyway, so this could be considered an end to it all. After all, I was really tired. At this moment, I faintly heard Colleen's exclamation from outside, "Senior, why are you here?" Then she anxiously said, "No, Senior, you can't go in there." Evidently, Colleen failed to stop Daniel. Amidst the raging fire, I saw Daniel's figure breaking through the door and rushing in. Upon seeing me tightly bound and thrown in the corner, Daniel, without a word, scooped me up and ran towards the exit. The flames scorched his arms and seared his handsome face. He held me tightly in his arms, his forehead covered in beads of sweat, desperate to protect me from any harm. My consciousness began to fade, the excruciating pain in my internal organs left me speechless, and the taste of blood seeped into my mouth. I wanted to call out his name, to tell him not to save me, that I couldn't hold on any longer. Finally, in Daniel's jostling arms, I slowly closed my eyes. In the darkness, I saw an 18-year-old Daniel walking towards me from a bright light. When I regained consciousness, I felt lighter, and the illness that had tormented me for so long had vanished. I floated in midair, watching Daniel argue fiercely with the doctor, demanding to know how I could have died. The doctor, unable to cope, repeatedly explained that I had late-stage stomach cancer. Didn't have long to live, and the shock had hastened my death. Daniel stared blankly at my body, now covered with a white sheet. After a moment, he broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. "Sylvia, I'm sorry. It's my fault. You've suffered for so long being with me. I remember everything now. I'm a beast. You can hit me, scold me, just don't leave me. Please come back. I won't be angry anymore. We'll live a good life together. I'll only be with you." Colleen, who had been hiding in the corner, saw that Daniel had regained his memory and quickly rushed to his side. "Senior, you remember now, right? She's dead. No one will stand between us anymore. I'll always be by your side like she was. Get lost." Before Colleen could finish speaking, Daniel shoved her away. He looked at her with disgust, all past affection gone from his eyes, as if he were looking at an enemy. "Who do you think you are? How dare you compare yourself to Sylvia?" With that, he immediately called a contact here to prepare lawsuit materials. He wanted to sue Colleen for intentional homicide. Colleen was completely stunned, incredulously questioning how Daniel could treat her this way. I was also curious. Since Daniel had regained his memory, he shouldn't be sending his beloved Colleen to prison just to avenge me. Soon, my confusion was cleared up. After chasing Colleen away, Daniel held my hand, crying and murmuring, "Sylvia, do you know? The moment I heard the doctor pronounce you dead, everything that happened after we got together flashed through my mind like a movie. I watched like a bystander as I hurt you over and over again. You asked me why, and I even said I didn't love you. Seeing all this, I wanted to slap that version of myself twice and ask him why he betrayed someone as good as Sylvia. The memories torment me every day. I finally understand why you hated me. Even I can never empathize with the me who hurt you." It turns out Daniel did regain his memories. But it was the 18-year-old Daniel who saw how he repeatedly trampled on my true feelings later on. This was undoubtedly a tremendous pain for Daniel. On one hand, he loved me, but on the other, he had to acknowledge that he had indeed betrayed me later, ultimately indirectly causing my death. Upon realizing he was the executioner who hastened my death, Daniel felt worse than dead. According to my last wishes, my corneas were donated to Albert, and my organs were given to others in need. All Daniel was left with was a handful of ashes. After sending Colleen to prison, Daniel became increasingly depressed. He no longer managed the company he had founded, nor did he engage in any social activities. Instead, he spent his days in the room where I had lived, either drinking excessively or reminiscing about our years together through old chat records on his phone. Finally, on an ordinary weekend, amid shattered porcelain pieces, Daniel finished his last cigarette. Holding my urn, he ended his life with a shard of porcelain. As his breath slowly faded, my body gradually became more transparent until it completely dissipated. The voice left in the wind said, "Sylvia, wait for me. I'm coming to be with you. I'm sorry."